Welcome to another episode of Seeing Them Live, a podcast featuring memorable concert stories from live music fans. Everyone has a concert story, and hopefully, one day, we'll hear yours. Today, we're going to hear Todd's.
The three girls ran across the street to the hotel the Beach Boys were at, and my sister ended up getting a cigarette signed by Dennis Wilson, which to this day, she's 72, she still has.
I'm with Todd Sherlock today, and Todd, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background? I know you, well, I've known you a long time, actually. Most recently, maybe not so recently, you're into photography and stuff and art in general, but yeah, why don't you kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I started working in art galleries when I was like 22 and ended up working in galleries till I was about 62. And then I picked up a Nikon and just started shooting and started entering shows and things like that. So that's been about 10 years. And, I have my photos. If you want to check them out at Todd Sherlock on Instagram. So that's kind of the background.
Yeah, you've done, well, my wife and I have purchased a couple of your photographs, nature photographs, and you also do some live music stuff as a fan, and we'll get into that a little later, but I guess I always start off with concert stories, and you've got a lot of them kind of at the beginning. So let's start with the Beach Boys concert in 1964, Todd, with you kind of tagged along with your sister and her friends, right?
Right. I was 13 and they let me come along with them. I think they were 15, probably 15-year-olds. And that was my first concert. It was in Omaha, Nebraska. Another little sidelight. Brian Wilson wasn't in that concert. He was having some mental challenges, and they had this guy named Glenn Campbell fill in for him.
Oh, okay.
So that's when he was more of a session guy, and one of the best known, I guess, out in LA. So he was on that tour. That just kind of came to me last night. So yeah, that was my first one. And then after the concert, I waited for our parents to pick us up, but the three girls ran across the street to the hotel the Beach Boys were at. And my sister ended up getting a cigarette signed by Dennis Wilson, which to this day, she's 72, she still has. So
yeah,
and even thinking more about that, back in 1964, to come home with a cigarette signed by some rock star, it was kind of funny.
Yeah, I guess if that's the ultimate in, like, if you want to get somebody's autograph and you weren't prepared to get it, you're like, well, a cigarette, I guess, is technically made out of paper, right? And
he must have pulled one out and signed it for her, and she put it in like a Ziploc, and it's never been taken out. So.
And yeah, of course, you've seen the cigarette. Then, of course, you
saw
it right after the fact. Then,
oh yeah,
that's hilarious.
So that was the first time I ever saw anybody.
So then, I don't know where you wanted to move to next, Todd, but we can go anywhere with. I know you had mentioned this Hermits show, which I looked.
Yeah.
I did some internet searching.
Okay.
And it looked like it was 1967, so a few years after this Beach Boys concert. You went to see Hermits. Where was this being?
That was in Madison, Wisconsin, at the Dane County Coliseum, which still exists to this day. And yeah, that's when Hermits were like the big thing, the pop group. So they had this act called The Who open up for them. And that was when The Who, back in the day at the end of the concert, would destroy all their instruments and, have smoke rising and all this, whether or not it was really the guitars they were playing with, or they just handed them cheap things to break up. But I mean, they would kick in the drum set, so that was a little strange. That was obviously the drum set they were using. But I guess they did that at the very first, and that got good press and attention. So yeah, they opened for Hermits.
But you weren't expecting that for them to do. There's kind of a like sort of shocking or surprise when you saw them do that.
I probably didn't even know too much about the Who at that point. So in '67, who knows? That probably was maybe their second year.
Yeah, I was reading that was the first time they toured the U.S. and it was an unlikely pairing. One rock critic was saying how, Hermits will be around forever, but this band, the Who, I doubt if they're going to last more than a few years or something like that. So when they did that, then I guess Hermits was kind of maybe used to that by that point, so they weren't put off by them destroying their instruments. But that must have been some kind of a recovery then to get the stage all ready for the main act, I guess.
Yeah, that being the first tour, that kind of makes sense now. It would get them some good press, and the band that destroys their instruments at the end of their set. So
no, that's cool, especially if you weren't expecting it. It's like, wow, what the heck and that was, I mean, nobody did that, right? I mean, that's pure insanity. Like, you're destroying your instruments. That
was unheard of. So
it's very cool.
Yep, that place still stands, and they still have concerts there. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, because I was reading too, Todd, that it holds, or they were selling at the time like 8,000 seat arenas. Is it about that kind of that size? Do you recall?
Yeah, to me it would seem to be maybe a little bigger, but of course back then they weren't selling seats behind the stage, so losing all those seats, that probably makes sense. It's not huge for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have so many things to draw on here, Todd. I'm just kind of looking at my list and the dates. I guess I'm going in chronological order here.
Okay.
You saw the Eagles at a racetrack, a horse racetrack,
right?
Back in 1975, and if you wanted to just chat about that a little bit.
Well, they were actually playing for Linda Ronstadt. So she was the highlight of the concert. It was at Washington Park, like you said, racetrack, and Fry was in the band, and she had actually told them after this tour that they should go out. They felt kind of obliged to her to stay with her on the tour and all that, but she said, "You guys got to go out and form your own band." So that's how the Eagles kind of came about. But I went there that day to see Linda Ronstadt, and they just had folding chairs out on the racetrack, and a little stage, no big deal. And so that's kind of a nice story that she said, "No, you guys need to just go ahead. You got so much talent that you need to go out and start your own group." So that's kind of how the start of the Eagles.
It's good advice, I guess, huh?
Yeah. They did pretty well.
Yeah, they didn't do too bad for themselves.
Yeah, still doing well.
Yeah, still touring, I think, right? I mean, they're whatever surviving members are still left. All right, let's see. I don't know. We could go to Led Zeppelin in Cincinnati, and I was telling you earlier, all these years I'd seen all these concerts and stuff, and I never had talked to anybody who had actually seen Led Zeppelin. And I didn't realize at the time, but I thought, gosh, that's weird. But you saw them in Cincinnati. You did like a road trip with these guys that lived in your condo building, was it, Todd? That went to lots of concerts and stuff?
Yeah, they had a band, and they always seemed to have a extra ticket and would just say, "Hey, you want to go to Cincinnati? We got to go to Columbus first and pick up a couple guys in college." And I was always game. So yeah, that was I'm shaky on the years, but that was at Riverfront Coliseum, right next to where the Reds play.
Right.
Indoor. And so we got there, and it was about a 7-hour wait until they were going to open doors. So, it was a hot summer day, and people were just lined up to get in because they had festival seating. So, of course, everyone, once the doors opened, wanted to be the first in to get right up against the stage and on the floor. So, consequently, when they did open the doors, there was a rush to get in. They only opened 2 doors for maybe 18,000 people. And people were turning over big metal trash cans and just rushing and knocking people down. I saw someone go down next to me, and I thought, I'd like to help them, but if I go down, I'm not going to get up.
Mm-hmm.
So my four buddies and I got separated totally before we got in the doors. And eventually I made my way up to where the 2 doors were open, but I had to get up on the railing, which was pressing against the plate glass. And I literally had to jump through the door, just throw myself through the door to get in there. So watched the concert by myself, because by that time we're all separated. And then, great concert, of course, the Lasers, that was all new at the time. And, they put on a great show, of course. But then later on, that is the same location where the Who, coming back to the Who, where they did have like 11, 12 fatalities, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, that was same spot. That's why when you were telling me that, it was intriguing. I had just finished reading this book by Bob Spitz. It's called Led Zeppelin, the biography. And in here I've got the page 493. It says there was rioting and arrests in St. Paul, Minnesota, when hundreds of ticketless fans stormed the arena, and again in Cincinnati, where local papers reported that legions of rowdy gate crashers battled with police, leading to more than 100 arrests. And I think, we were chatting earlier, Todd, and it's like, this is 1977, April.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, 77.
And you're a fan, Led Zeppelin fan, you don't have tickets, but you and your friends, you actually had tickets, but I'm just hypothetical.
Right.
Like, me, for instance, I'm there, my friends, we don't have tickets. So, you can crash the gates and you get in, right? Like you were saying with these garbage cans and such. But then the Who then comes like a couple years later. Okay. And I would imagine lots of fans who had been to Led Zeppelin shows and other concerts there, you kind of have this mentality, well, if you don't have a ticket, you could crash the gate and you probably get in there. They can't stop you. So you have a sold out show. Didn't you say that you waited in line for quite a while to get in, right?
Before they 7 hours. Lined up for 7 hours.
And then gate crashers on top of that, and you open 2 doors for 18,000 people. Yeah, that's a recipe for a disaster, and which unfortunately did happen at that Who concert.
Like you said, people probably thought, well, it worked against Led Zeppelin. Let's go try it again.
Right.
But after the Who, then they pressed for no more festival seating for any concert ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was more the rush. You wanted to be in the first 10 rows or whatever. So you knew you were going to get in and sit up in the balcony, on the balcony or whatever. But all those people wanted to get into the, right up against the stage. So I think that's what created the biggest. But I myself never really heard that 100 were arrested at the Cincinnati one. I guess I was fighting my way to get.
You escaped the arrest.
So yeah, that was unfortunate. I was trying to figure out how many years. It was only a couple years later all that happened then.
We'll hear more from our guests after a short break. Would you like to be a guest on Seeing Them Live? If you have a concert story you'd like to share on this podcast, please visit our website at seeingthemlive.com. Once you're there, click on Become a Guest in the main menu. Then fill out the form and click the Submit button. If you seem like a good fit for the show, we'll contact you via email. Everyone has a concert story. Let's hear yours. And now, back to the show. Well, Todd, you had mentioned, one of your favorite concerts, and there's a few, but you'd mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about that Bob Marley show. I think it was in 1978 at the Uptown Theater in Chicago.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think, what year did he die? I think 80.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure.
And that was another one. A buddy just handed me a ticket in my apartment building. He said, "You want to go see Bob Marley?" I go, "I don't know Bob Marley." So he kind of turned me on to Bob Marley before we went. And it was right after he came out with his first album. So he was just getting known in the U.S. I Shot the Sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that at the Uptown, of course, half the greatness. I mean, I think it was one of the best concerts I ever saw, period. But just being at the Uptown Theater, that's been there for, close to 100 years now, probably. Cab Calloway played there in the 19 whatever. And
Right.
But it was just a regal theater. And I'm thinking that might have had 3,000, 3,500 people total, because it was an old vaudeville movie theater.
Yeah, I actually looked up the capacity of that, and it says it holds a little over 4,300 people. It was a movie palace, they called it, and it's the largest movie theater in the country, in the U.S.
Oh, all right.
At that time,
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, just the architecture, I'm into that, and just the beauty of the location, and then to see Bob Marley and the Wailers. I became a lifelong Marley fan after that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think he did die. I'm pretty sure it was 1980 when he died. So not a long career, but
no, there's some good video I looked up on YouTube, a couple of songs in particular, Exodus and Jammin'. Where I mean, someone was right up there, because they're right, they zoomed in a little bit, you could tell, but right on his face, and him playing, and just the sound is great. So I'm always interested in, it'd be great to hear the story of the person who snuck that camera in and then was able to video. It's like what the troubles of people to go through to get that kind of stuff in there.
Oh yeah, back in the day, all the bootleg stuff. We have the very last row, but it was just, like I say, a tremendous concert. So that's on one of my all-time favorite lists, as you said. And hopefully the Uptown will be coming back. They've been trying to get that rehab, but I think it's a $40 million, $50 million job to get it up and running again. But that would be a great place to, see smaller concerts. I don't know if the big bands would do it, but back then.
Yeah, you never know. I was there once. I saw Charlie Daniels there with some of my friends. I think it was 1979 or something like that.
The second and only one then after that I went was Santana, celebrating their 10th anniversary. So they're about into 50 years now. So if you kind of figure out when that was. So that was a great one too. I love Carlos Santana, guitar playing.
And so what other than Bob Marley, what are some of your other favorite shows, and why?
I wrote down last night, the first Farm Aid.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
That was 85. And my dad lived in Champaign. So I took my 13-year-old son and my 64-year-old dad. And
So this is the first Farm Aid in Champaign-Urbana, U of
right,
I, the U of I football stadium, basically.
correct. And that, as you know, had about 35 acts. It was over a 12-hour concert. My son and I hung out for the whole thing. And my dad, he loved Willie Nelson and Neil Young. So after they played, Dad went back home.
Hmm.
But, you know, looking back now, of course, Dad's gone and my son will be 50. So that's just a nice memory. Another one would be Tom Petty's last tour. That one, I got to take my son and my grandson. So that was, I was thinking last night, that was probably about mid tour. I kind of looked up some things on that. I think he did 56 dates, but that's when he was he actually had a fractured hip, emphysema, I think some heart problems, and probably should have just quit the tour midway, but he felt he owed it. It was his last tour, so he felt he owed it to his fans to keep going, and he did all 56. The end of the tour in August, and then as we know, in September, he died.
Yeah.
So that was just taking my son and grandson was great, but then the fact that it was his last tour was kind of sad. I did get some halfway decent photos of him on stage that night. So, and I still got my ticket stub from that night. So I'm going to frame up a picture of him with the ticket stub.
Do you save most of your ticket stubs, Todd?
Yeah, I did. And then all of a sudden they would go to, you know, now they're paper or they're on your phone and it's nothing exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Up until the time they started doing paper, yeah, I would keep everyone.
Now, getting back to your like just the tie-in with I thought it was kind of interesting. You were 13 when you went with your sister to see the
Right.
Beach Boys, and then your son, you were saying you think he was around 13 when you took him to Farm Aid. How old was
Yeah.
your grandson when you took him to see Tom
Oh,
Petty?
let's see, I'm thinking how many years ago that is already. He was in his 20s at that
Oh,
time.
okay. Okay. I thought we were going for like the
Yeah.
313, because
Yeah.
that when I went with my mom to see the Eagles,
Yeah.
1976, and then she took me to see Pink Floyd in 77. I was
Yeah.
11, 12, and then, she took me to a bunch of other concerts. I always refer to her as she's there's the soccer moms,
Yeah.
the helicopter moms, and then there's the concert moms,
Right.
moms that take their kids to concerts, which my friends were always like, "Oh man, your mom's so cool. She takes you to these concerts." So
Hey, Pink Floyd,
you're the concert grandpa, the concert dad.
Dad.
Yeah.
I remember taking my son to Eddie Murphy Raw. I think he might have been a little too young. Yeah, I always try to have a concert on the schedule. And as of yesterday, I do have a ticket to Springsteen at Wrigley Field August 9th. So I've never seen him. So that's going to be exciting. Yeah, my son and I have done many concerts. Actually, last summer for my birthday, he took me to Steely Dan, and I really hadn't seen them in concert. So even at 71, you can catch some people you've never seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're kind of still around in various forms, right? Various
Right.
lineups. Yeah, I was going to mention too, Todd. You've taken quite a few photographs of some of these performances, and you had shown me one
Yeah.
just right as Lisa Marie Presley had passed away. You had captured a really awesome photo of her when she had toured, played live, and I was unaware that she toured and did concerts until you sent me that picture. And so, did you want to
Yeah.
chat a little bit about that?
Yeah. That was at the Arcada. I think it was 2002. So 10, 11 years ago. I just saw they were advertising for her. And then I think I went and listened to a little of the music. I thought, yeah, I like it. I'll go. I think it was one of those $39 concerts at Arcada in the balcony.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she was really good. Her first album, Rolling Stone said critically acclaimed, and wasn't really riding on her dad's tailcoat or whatever. And I think she only had 3 to 4 at the most CDs. And then she had some health problems. I always hoped she would come back. She had a tight band behind her, really good musicians. And yeah, that one I was at Arcada. I actually got my good camera in with the zoom. So I'm up in the balcony zooming away. I probably had taken 100 photos, and I got tapped on the shoulder. The guy said, "One more photo and we're throwing you out of here."
Oh, man.
I don't know. She must have seen a red light or something coming from the upper balcony every time I took a photo or something. So they came all the way up to the balcony. By that time, I had as much as I needed, so that was okay.
Yeah. Were you allowed to bring a camera in there, or that was
Yeah,
kind of
they
iffy?
they wouldn't let they wouldn't let you take the super long lens in. It's more like a pocket camera, but that time I did get my 35 millimeter in there. And I said, "Hey," I just walked in. The guy said, "No, not that big." I said, "Hey, I got in. They let me in last time," so he let me in. And of course, that was the last time I got that camera in.
Yeah.
That was the problem. Then I would have to go with a small one that almost looked like a cell phone, because you had to put all your metal stuff in a basket. When you go into United Center and all that stuff, and it got harder and harder. I got stopped one time. The guy goes, "Nope, you got to take that back to your car." I went outside the United Center and I put it under a porta potty and went back in, and then retrieved it after the concert. I wasn't going all the way back to my car.
That's quick thinking, Todd. That's resourceful.
I think if I hadn't had the phone and the camera, if you just put the camera face up, it looks like a phone. It's about the size, but they make it pretty tough. But I've got enough to put a book together of different artists, and that's what I was kind of doing that with that Lisa Marie photo I had out a couple days laying on my table before she died. So that was kind of eerie.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great, check out her music.
Yeah, I did. I think you sent me some video of her.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was from that show or a different show, but you can definitely hear her dad's voice a little bit in her voice when she's singing. So it's kind of interesting.
Got a kind of a low gravelly voice, like you say. But yeah, I play her stuff all the time. So that was a good one at Arcada. I've seen quite a few good ones there. George Benson, Johnny Lang. I don't know. It just seemed they always had a $39 ticket. So like, oh, America, I saw there. That was really one of the best concerts I've seen.
Yeah.
Doing their 40-year repertoire.
Huh.
So it's been bad with the pandemic. The last one I did before the pandemic was Eric Clapton at Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
And they were saying that was supposed to be his last tour. So I saw, you were asking about, did you ever buy T-shirts and things? That one, I did buy a T-shirt. It only had about 7 or 8 dates on it. That's all he was doing. And the last one was at Madison Square Garden. And the rumor going around in the papers that weekend was this was going to be the finale. He's got neuropathy in his hands. And then about a month later, he was touring again.
Yeah, he was cured. That's good.
Yeah. So
that's funny how that happens. Yeah. Anything else, Todd, that you'd like to add before we wrap up here?
Well, like you say, there's been so many. I've written everyone down that I've gone to, so I'll have to show you that list sometime. So I mean, each of those would have a story, but
yeah, I know it's funny when you start looking at these ticket stubs. I save all of my concert tickets, most of them anyway, and you're like, oh yeah, and then you do a little online search, and there's a lot of stuff out there. That set list, I think .fm, I think it's called, and yeah, people populate that, live music fans, and boy, there's just a lot of information there, and then YouTube videos and
Oh, yeah.
audio recordings, bootleg recordings. It's just, it's cool. Even when I was listening to that Bob Marley, those songs
Yeah.
at the show you were at, I was kind of thinking, well, Todd's part of this recording. He's cheering away here, kind of
Yeah.
neat. Yeah, it's kind of a way to kind of revisit the concert that you didn't necessarily expect it to be captured ever to ever hear it again,
Yeah. Yeah, I've got quite a few of his live ones. Actually, the last I have, it's called Live from Cleveland, and it's the last concert he ever did. It's a 2 CD set, or maybe 4 albums, but it was kind of sad at the end. Yeah, see you next year, Cleveland. Well, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a cool one to have, his last concert ever. But yeah, like you said, just you see a ticket stub and you go, oh yeah, you remember the people you were with. And like you say, you can look, it's kind of fun. Modern day now, you can go back and just say Led Zeppelin, Cincinatti, the set list, like you say, will come up. And so.
Yeah, it's like nice a form of time travel, sort of,
right.
In a way. So yeah, Todd, anything else you'd like to add while closing here? We'll have link to your Instagram and stuff in the show notes.
Okay.
And if you think of anything else, just let us know, and we'll get them together. And thanks again for being on Seeing Them Live. Really appreciate it. And look at that list again now, and maybe you come back and talk about some more concerts with us.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, Todd. Thank you. Bye-bye. That's a wrap for our show. I want to thank today's guests for sharing their concert stories with us. Make sure to check out our show notes at seeingthemlive.com for links to websites, photos, and other artifacts mentioned in the show. I also want to thank my producer, Doug Florzak. The theme music for the show was composed by Doug and is featured on his album, Flagstone. If you have a concert story you'd like to share on our podcast, please visit our website and click on Become a Guest in the main menu. Then fill out the form and click the Submit button. If you seem like a good fit for the show, we'll contact you via email. I guess it's time to head for the exits. We'll see you next time on Seeing Them Live.